Instead of saying, "He should understand what I'm going through," you begin saying, "What can I do with what I have?" Marcus Aurelius believed that excuses weaken the soul. Progress begins when you stop explaining and start acting. You also become more compassionate, not less. When you stop expecting others to care deeply about you, you stop demanding emotional labor from them. This makes your relationships lighter and healthier. You give without keeping score. You listen without expecting to be understood in return. You help without needing gratitude. Stoicism does not harden your heart. It removes entitlement from it. Love becomes a choice, not a transaction. In 2026, mental resilience is one of the most valuable skills you can develop. The world will not slow down for your feelings. Algorithms will not pause for your struggles. Trends will not wait for your healing. Accepting that nobody sees forces you to build resilience early rather than learning it through repeated disappointment. Marcus Aurelius wrote that difficulties strengthen the mind, just as labor strengthens the body. What resists you trains you. There is also a quiet dignity in carrying your burdens without complaint. This does not mean suppressing emotion, but processing it privately and constructively. When you stop announcing your pain, you stop reliving it. When you stop seeking sympathy, you start seeking growth. Stoicism teaches that suffering handled wisely becomes wisdom. Pain handled poorly becomes bitterness. You may begin to notice that people start respecting you more once you stop seeking their attention. This is another Stoic paradox. Detachment often attracts curiosity, for self-sufficiency commands respect. When you no longer chase validation, your presence becomes calmer, steadier, more grounded. Marcus Aurelius understood that influence comes from example, not persuasion. You do not convince people with words alone. You show them through consistency. At some point you will realize that the idea nobody cares no longer feels heavy. It feels neutral, almost peaceful. You stop interpreting indifference as rejection. You stop personalizing silence. You understand that most people are not thinking about you at all, and that is not an insult. It is freedom. You are released from the imaginary spotlight you once believed you were standing under. This mindset also prepares you for failure. When nobody cares, failure loses its sting. You are no longer embarrassed by mistakes that few will remember. You are more willing to try, to risk, to experiment. Marcus Aurelius believed that growth requires friction. A person afraid of judgment never moves forward. A person who accepts indifference keeps going. As the years pass, what you build quietly begins to compound. Discipline compounds. Character compounds. Skills compound. While others burn out chasing attention, you grow steadily in the background. Stoicism is not a fast path, but it is a durable one. Marcus Aurelius ruled during wars, plagues, and betrayal, yet his calm endured because it was not dependent on comfort or praise. So when you feel the weight of being unseen, remind yourself of this truth. You are not invisible to life itself. Every action you take shapes you. Every challenge you endure sharpens you. Whether anyone notices is irrelevant. What matters is that you are becoming someone you can respect when the noise fades. In the end, the Stoic message is not that nobody cheats, therefore nothing matters. It is that nobody keys, therefore you must key deeply about the right things, your values, your conduct, your discipline, your inner peace. Marcus Aurelius understood that a person aligned with their conscience needs very little from the outside world. Over time, this way of thinking reshapes how you experience every part of your life. You stop chasing moments that look impressive from the outside and start valuing moments that feel solid on the inside. The private struggles, the disciplined routines. Stoicism honors these unseen victories. They are the foundation of a stable life. Recognition fades, character remains. When you carry this philosophy fully, fear of judgment loses its grip. You are no longer afraid to be ordinary in the eyes of the world, because you are exceptional in your commitment to self-mastery. Marcus Aurelius understood that greatness is not loud, it is consistent, it is ethical, it is inward. So if today you feel overlooked, uncelebrated, or forgotten, remind yourself of this deeper truth. You are not here to be watched, you are here to live well. Focus on the quality of your actions, not the quantity of attention they receive. Let your progress be quiet and your character loud. In 2026, when the world demands constant visibility, choosing invisibility can be an act of strength. It allows you to build a life that is resilient, grounded, and meaningful. Nobody caring becomes your advantage. It removes distractions. It sharpens focus. It teaches independence. carry this Stoic wisdom forward. Walk your path without expecting applause. Improve without announcing it. Endure without complaining. Care deeply about becoming better, even if no one else ever notices, because in the end, the person you must live with forever is yourself. Eventually, you reach a point where this philosophy stops feeling like an idea and starts feeling like instinct. You no longer remind yourself that nobody cares. You simply live as if it is already understood. Decisions become simpler. You choose what is right over what is impressive. You choose what is necessary over what is popular. Marcus Aurelius believed that a life lived in accordance with reason brings a quiet satisfaction that no praise can replace. You begin to trust time more than attention. Attention is immediate but shallow. Time is slow but honest. When nobody cares about what you are building today, time will still reward consistent effort tomorrow. Stoicism teaches patience not as passivity, but as confidence in long-term outcomes. You plant seeds knowing you may never sit in the shade they create. That mindset removes anxiety about results and replaces it with commitment to process. In moments of setback, this way of thinking protects you. When things fall apart and no one comes to rescue you, you do not feel betrayed. You expected this, not cynically but realistically. Marcus Aurelius prepared his mind for adversity so that when it arrived, it would not shock him. In 2026, resilience belongs to those who are mentally prepared, not those who are emotionally dependent. You also stop romanticizing struggle. You do not wear suffering as an identity or use it to gain sympathy. You treat it as a temporary condition, something to be endured and learned from. Stoicism does not glorify pain, but it refuses to dramatize it. When nobody cares about your hardship, you learn to face it directly instead of narrating it endlessly. This shortens suffering instead of prolonging it. As your inner world stabilizes, your outer reactions soften. You speak with less urgency and more clarity. You argue less, not because you are weak, but because you no longer need to win. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best way to deal with ignorant or unkind people is to remain just. Calmness becomes your strength. Silence becomes your shield. You also become comfortable with slow progress. In a world obsessed with instant results, this patience sets you apart. When nobody is cheering you on, you are forced to rely on internal standards. You learn to measure success by effort and consistency rather than speed. Stoicism teaches that anything worth building takes time, and anything built too fast often collapses just as quickly. There comes a moment when you realize that being overlooked has protected you. It has shielded you from ego, from pressure, from becoming someone you do not respect. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You ask, what does this require of me? This shift changes everything. Problems become tasks. Pain becomes information. Failure becomes feedback. When nobody cares about your struggle, you stop dramatizing it and start handling it. This is maturity. In relationships, this philosophy brings balance. You stop demanding constant emotional validation. You give people space to be imperfect, distracted, human. You no longer interpret delayed replies or missed gestures as rejection. You understand that everyone is living inside their own storm. This makes you calmer, easier to be around, and ironically, more valued. Marcus Aurelius believed that harmony with others begins with realistic expectations. You also become harder to manipulate. When praise no longer excites you and neglect no longer wounds you, external control loses its power. No one can easily provoke you with insults or lure you with approval. Stoicism teaches emotional independence, and emotional independence is freedom. In a world built on triggering reactions, the person who remains calm holds the advantage. There will be days when motivation disappears completely. On those days, this mindset carries you. You do not rely on feeling inspired. You rely on routine. You do what needs to be done because it is aligned with who you choose to be. Marcus Aurelius believed that discipline is a form of self-respect. You keep promises to yourself even when no one else knows they exist. Slowly, you start trusting yourself more. You no longer need constant feedback to know whether you are on the right path. Your inner compass grows stronger. You know when you are acting with integrity and when you are not. This internal clarity is rare. Most people outsource their judgment to the crowd. Stoicism teaches you to reclaim it. You may also notice that fear of failure fades. When nobody cares, failure becomes private. It becomes safe. You can try again without shame. You can start over without explanation. Marcus Aurelius understood that fear of judgment paralyzes growth. Freedom from judgment restores movement. As the years move forward, your life begins to feel less chaotic, not because problems disappear, but because you respond to them with steadiness. You stop reacting impulsively, you pause, you assess, you act. This calm decision-making is one of the most powerful outcomes of Stoic thinking. In 2026, when panic spreads quickly, calm becomes leadership. Eventually, you stop needing this philosophy to comfort you. It becomes how you naturally see the world. You no longer feel offended by indifference. You no longer feel empty without attention. You feel grounded, complete. Marcus Aurelius believed that the goal of philosophy was not to sound wise, but to live well. And so when the world looks away, you do not collapse. You continue. When no one applauds, you still act with care. When no one understands, you still remain just. This is not loneliness. This is strength. Nobody caring does not mean you are alone. It means you are responsible. Responsible for your thoughts. Responsible for your thoughts. Responsible for your actions. Responsible for the direction of your life. Stoicism does not promise comfort. It promises clarity. And clarity, once gained, cannot be taken from you. Carry this truth with you. Let it simplify your choices. Let it harden your discipline and soften your ego. Let it remind you that the only approval you truly need is your own. Because at the end of the day, when all voices fade, you will still be there with yourself. And if you have lived with integrity, calm, and purpose, that will be enough. As this mindset fully settles into your life, you begin to experience a rare kind of steadiness. The ups and downs of attention no longer dictate your emotional state. You are not lifted by praise or crushed by silence. Your sense of worth becomes quieter, but far stronger. Marcus Aurelius believed that the strongest souls are those that remain consistent regardless of circumstances. They do not need constant reinforcement. They have already decided who they are. You start to notice how much clearer your thinking becomes when you stop imagining an audience. Decisions are no longer filtered through the question of how they will look. They are filtered through whether they are right. This removes confusion. Many people feel lost not because they lack options, but because they are trying to satisfy too many invisible observers. When nobody sees, that noise disappears. You can finally hear your own judgment. In 2026, when identity is often shaped by trends and opinions, this clarity is rare. You no longer feel pressure to adopt beliefs just to belong. You are comfortable standing slightly apart, not isolated but independent. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that it is better to be aligned with truth than popular with the crowd. Popularity changes, truth endures. You also become more forgiving of yourself. When nobody is watching, perfection loses its grip. You allow yourself to be human without labeling every flaw as failure. You correct your course calmly instead of shaming yourself harshly. Stoicism teaches self-discipline, not self-hatred. Growth happens faster when you are firm but fair with yourself. Over time, your reactions to setbacks grow slower and wiser. Where there was once panic, there is now assessment. Where there was once frustration, there is now adjustment. You stop asking life to be easier and start asking yourself to be stronger. Marcus Aurelius believed that life does not give obstacles to stop us, but materials to shape us. Indifference from others becomes one of those materials. You may notice that your conversations change. You speak less about what you plan to do and more about what you are doing. You complain less and act more. You listen more closely because you are not waiting for your turn to be noticed. This presence makes your words carry more weight. Stoicism turns silence into substance. As years pass, this way of living compounds quietly. You become reliable, calm, grounded. People may not know your story, but they feel your stability. And even if they never acknowledge it, your life functions better because of it. Marcus Aurelius did not write to be remembered. He wrote to remain sane and honorable. The fact that we still read his words is proof that quiet integrity has a long reach. There will still be moments when you wish someone understood you more deeply. Stoicism does not remove human longing, but it teaches you not to build your life around it. You allow the feeling to pass without letting it define your actions. You continue forward without bitterness. This emotional maturity is strength disguised as calm. Eventually, you stop thinking of indifference as something negative. You see it as neutral, even useful. It creates space. Space to think, space to grow, space to become someone who does not collapse when attention fades. Marcus Aurelius believed that the mind should be like a fortress, not to keep the world out, but to remain stable when the world presses in. In a society obsessed with being heard, choosing to focus inward is a quiet rebellion. You stop shouting, you stop proving, you stop performing, And in that stillness you build something real, not an image, but a character, not a reputation, but a life. So when you move through your days and realize that nobody is watching closely, let that truth steady you. Let it remove fear. Let it remove fear. Let it sharpen discipline. Let it simplify your priorities. You are not failing because no one notices. You are training, and when the years move forward and you look back, you may realize that the moments that mattered most were never the ones where you were seen. They were the moments where you chose to act rightly in silence, where you stayed disciplined without reward, where you kept going without encouragement. As this philosophy continues to shape you, you begin to feel less rushed by life. Urgency fades, not because time slows down, but because your mind stops panicking. You no longer feel like you are falling behind just because others appear to be ahead. You understand that most appearances are illusions and most timelines are exaggerated. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that every person is running their own race, often without knowing where they are going. When nobody cares about your pace, you are free to walk steadily instead of sprinting blindly. You also develop a deeper tolerance for discomfort. Small inconveniences no longer irritate you the way they once did. Delays, silence, lack of recognition, these things lose their emotional charge. Stoicism trains you to conserve your energy for what truly matters. You stop reacting to every minor disturbance. This emotional efficiency gives you strength over time. In 2026, when stress is normalized and exhaustion is worn like a badge, calm endurance becomes a competitive advantage. Another quiet change happens in how you experience success. When something goes well, you enjoy it without needing to announce it. You feel satisfaction without the urge to broadcast it. This makes success cleaner and more grounding. Marcus Aurelius believed that joy should come from alignment with virtue, not from applause. A life lived this way feels solid rather than fragile. You begin to realize that most anxiety comes from imagined futures and imagined judgments. When nobody cares, those imagined judges disappear. The future becomes a place to prepare for, not fear. You plan with realism instead of hope alone. You accept that setbacks are likely and prepare your mind accordingly. This preparation does not make you pessimistic. It makes you resilient. Your relationship with effort also matures. You stop expecting effort to be rewarded immediately. You stop asking life for fairness. You give effort because it is required, not because it guarantees recognition. Marcus Aurelius believed that doing your duty is enough. Outcomes are external. Effort is yours. This separation frees you from disappointment while preserving your work ethic. There is also a strengthening of your inner dialogue. You become a steadier companion to yourself. When things go wrong, you do not insult yourself or spiral into self-blame. You correct yourself firmly but calmly. Stoicism teaches self-command, not self-cruelty. Over time, this builds trust with yourself. You know that even in difficulty, you will not abandon your principles. When you observe others chasing attention, approval, and validation, you no longer feel envy. You feel understanding. You see the exhaustion behind the performance. You recognize the insecurity beneath the noise. Marcus Aurelius taught compassion grounded in realism. You do not judge people for needing attention. You simply refuse to need it yourself. You also stop over-explaining your choices. You do not feel the need to justify your boundaries, your pace, or your priorities. When nobody cares deeply enough to understand every detail, you learn to live without constant explanation. This simplifies your life dramatically. Fewer words, fewer arguments, fewer emotional negotiations. Over time, your focus narrows in a healthy way. You stop spreading yourself thin. You choose a few important things and commit to them fully. Your attention becomes intentional instead of reactive. Marcus Aurelius believed that a scattered mind weakens character. Concentration strengthens it. When nobody is demanding your performance, you can concentrate deeply. There will still be moments of doubt. Stoicism does not erase uncertainty, but it teaches you to coexist with it without panic. You act despite doubt. You continue despite lack of reassurance. Photo reassurance. This is where true confidence is built. Confidence is not the absence of uncertainty. It is the ability to move forward without needing constant confirmation. As years pass, this mindset creates a quiet pride. Not arrogance, but self-respect. You know what you have endured. You know what you have built. You do not need witnesses for your effort to matter. Marcus Aurelius believed that a good life is one that makes sense to the person living it. Eventually, you understand that indifference from others has protected your authenticity. Without an audience, you were free to become who you truly are, not who would be applauded. This is rare. Most people never escape the pressure to perform. Stoicism offers you that escape. So you continue living deliberately. You wake up and do what needs to be done. You rest when needed. You improve where possible. You accept where you cannot change things. You treat others fairly without expecting them to do the same. You remain steady when ignored and humble when noticed. And in this way, your life becomes quieter but stronger. Less dramatic, more durable. Less reactive, more intentional. Nobody caring no longer feels like a loss. It feels like space. Space. 1. Space to think. Space to grow. Space to live according to reason and integrity. This is the heart of Marcus Aurelius' wisdom. Not to withdraw from the world, but to remain unshaken within it. Not to demand meaning from attention, but to create meaning through conduct. When the noise fades and expectations fall away, what remains is you, your character, and your choices. And if those are in order, you have everything you need. As this way of living becomes natural, you begin to sense a deeper kind of confidence taking root. Not the loud confidence that seeks approval, but the quiet kind that does not need reinforcement. You trust yourself more because you have proven to yourself repeatedly that you can endure without applause. Marcus Aurelius believed that self-trust is earned through consistent action, not positive thinking. Each day you show up without being seen strengthens that trust. You also stop romanticizing recognition. You understand now that attention often comes with distortion. People see a version of you shaped by their needs, biases, and projections. When nobody cares, you are spared from being misunderstood at scale. You are allowed to remain complex, unfinished, human. Stoicism teaches that it is better to be honest with yourself than impressive to others. In 2026, when public opinion can turn overnight, this independence becomes protection. You are not destabilized by sudden praise or sudden rejection. Trends rise and fall, but your direction remains steady. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that crowds are fickle and opinions are unstable. Anchoring your peace to them is a gamble you eventually lose. You start to appreciate effort for its own sake. The satisfaction of doing something well, even if no one notices, becomes enough. You clean your mind the way you would clean a room. No one else will see. You strengthen your body even if no one compliments it. You sharpen your skills even if no one applauds them. Stoicism teaches that excellence is a private commitment before it is ever a public one. Another shift occurs in how you handle uncertainty. When nobody is watching, you allow yourself to experiment. You change direction without embarrassment. You admit when something no longer fits. This flexibility makes you stronger, not weaker. Marcus Aurelius believed rigidity of ego creates suffering. Flexibility of mind creates resilience. You also begin to see that many conflicts disappear when the need to be acknowledged disappears. You argue less. You defend less. You correct less. You correct less. Not because you are indifferent to truth, but because you understand timing and energy. Some battles are not worth the cost. Stoicism teaches you to choose dignity over dominance. As time passes, you grow more comfortable with delayed results. You stop asking, when will this pay off? And start asking, is this worth doing regardless? This question changes your standards. You pursue things that would still matter even if they never bring recognition. Marcus Aurelius believed that the worth of an action lies in its alignment with virtue, not in its outcome. You may also notice that your emotional range becomes steadier. Highs are calmer, lows are less dramatic. You still feel deeply, but you are no longer overwhelmed by feeling. Stoicism does not flatten emotion, it stabilizes it. In a world addicted to extremes, this balance is rare. When setbacks occur, you recover faster. You do not linger in self-pity because there is no audience for it. You process, learn, adjust, and move on. This speed of recovery compounds over years. While others remain stuck replaying their pain, you continue forward. Marcus Aurelius believed that lingering on misfortune is a misuse of time. Gradually, your sense of identity shifts from who you appear to be to who you consistently are. This identity is harder to shake. It does not depend on mood, feedback, or circumstance. It depends on habits, values, and choices. Stoicism builds identity through action, not affirmation. You also develop patience with life itself. You stop demanding that everything makes sense immediately. You accept that some lessons reveal their value only later. Some struggles only show their purpose in hindsight. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that nature unfolds in its own time. Fighting that rhythm only creates frustration. In this state, you are less tempted to compare. Comparison loses meaning when your goals are internal. You are no longer trying to outrun others. You are trying to live correctly. This removes jealousy and replaces it with focus. You respect others' paths without needing to measure yourself against them. Eventually, you come to see that being unnoticed was never a flaw in your life. It was a feature. It allowed you to build quietly, think deeply, and grow honestly. Without constant feedback, you learned discernment. Without constant praise, you learned humility. Without constant support, you learned strength. So you continue day after day without drama. You wake up. You do your work. You treat others fairly. You correct yourself when needed. You rest when required. You improve where possible. This may not look impressive, but it is sustainable. And sustainability is power. Marcus Aurelius believed that the goal of life was not to be admired, but to live in harmony with reason and nature. When nobody cares, that goal becomes clearer. Fewer distractions, fewer illusions, fewer false needs. And when the world eventually turns its attention elsewhere, as it always does, you remain unchanged. Because your life was never built on being seen. It was built on being solid, that as this calm solidity deepens, you start to feel anchored in a way that cannot be shaken easily. Even when life becomes unpredictable, your inner posture remains upright. You no longer panic when plans fall apart or when outcomes disappoint you. You adjust. You adapt, you continue. Marcus Aurelius believed that a person should stand firm like a cliff against which waves constantly break, yet the cliff remains unmoved. This image slowly becomes how you experience yourself. You begin to see clearly how much noise the world produces and how little of it truly matters. Opinions rise and fall, outrage explodes and fades, praise circulates briefly and disappears. When nobody cares about you, you are spared from riding these emotional waves. You observe instead of reacting. Observation brings wisdom. Reaction drains energy. Stoicism teaches you to save your energy for action, not agitation. You also learn to appreciate anonymity. Being unknown allows you to grow without pressure. You are free to change your mind, free to learn slowly, free to fail quietly. Marcus Aurelius never intended his private reflections to be published. Yet their honesty is what made them powerful. In the same way, your unseen efforts shape you more deeply than anything performed for an audience. Over time, you notice that your desires simplify. You no longer crave admiration, status, or constant reassurance. You value clarity, health, discipline, and peace. Your priorities become cleaner, less cluttered. Stoicism strips life down to what is essential. When nobody cares, you stop collecting unnecessary wants and start protecting what truly matters. You also grow more tolerant of uncertainty. You stop needing guarantees before taking action. You accept that outcomes are never fully in your control. This acceptance does not weaken your effort. It sharpens it. You give your best without attachment to results. Marcus Aurelius believed that the task of a good person is to act rightly and accept whatever follows. In moments of fatigue, when the road feels long and unrewarded, this mindset sustains you. You remind yourself that effort is not wasted simply because it is unseen. Every disciplined choice strengthens your character. Every resisted impulse sharpens your self-control. Every quiet act of integrity builds inner alignment. These things compound even in silence. You become less dramatic about hardship. You do not deny difficulty, but you also do not inflate it. Pain becomes something you move through, not something you identify with. Stoicism teaches you to experience discomfort without turning it into a story about yourself. This prevents suffering from multiplying. Your sense of time also changes. You stop rushing to arrive somewhere and stop respecting the process of becoming. You understand that growth unfolds slowly and unevenly. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that nature works without haste, yet everything is accomplished. When nobody says about your timeline, you are free to follow a natural rhythm. In conversations, you become more deliberate. You speak when it adds value, not when it seeks attention. You listen without planning your response. This presence makes interactions richer and less exhausting. Stoicism does not isolate you from others. It improves the quality of connection by removing ego from it. You may still feel moments of loneliness, but they no longer frighten you. You understand that loneliness is often a signal to reconnect with your purpose, not necessarily with people. You turn inward and ask whether you are living according to your values. This inward check steadies you more than external reassurance ever could. As years pass, your resilience becomes visible not through words, but through consistency. You show up, you endure. You remain fair even when others are not. Marcus Aurelius believed that goodness should be practiced quietly without expectation of reward. That quiet goodness becomes your signature. You also grow more realistic about human nature. You stop expecting people to behave ideally. You stop being surprised by selfishness, inconsistency, or indifference. This realism does not make you cynical, it makes you prepared. When expectations align with reality, disappointment loses its grip. Eventually, you stop thinking in terms of being cared for or not cared for. That framework dissolves. You simply live, you act, you respond, you accept. The question of attention becomes irrelevant. What matters is whether you are acting in accordance with reason, integrity, and self-respect. And so day by day you build a life that does not depend on applause. A life that functions even in silence. A life that remains steady whether noticed or ignored. This is not a loud achievement. It is a durable one. Marcus Aurelius understood that the greatest freedom is freedom from the need to be seen. When you reach that freedom, the world can no longer disturb your center. You move through life quietly strong, inwardly ordered, and fully responsible for who you become. As this understanding takes root, a remarkable kind of freedom begins to emerge. You start to feel untethered from the constant need for validation. Praise, criticism, applause, neglect, they no longer sway you. Marcus Aurelius believed that inner freedom is the highest good because nothing outside can take it from you once it is secured. When nobody says about your life or your choices, you are free to live according to your principles without compromise. This freedom is quiet yet profound. You notice that your focus becomes sharper. You no longer expend energy trying to manage how others perceive you. You stop crafting appearances or explaining yourself unnecessarily. Energy once wasted on comparison, worry, or pretense is now available for your growth, learning, and action. This is one of the greatest advantages of living without expectation of recognition. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that external approval is fleeting. Only virtue lasts. You begin to understand that the absence of attention is not a punishment, but a training ground. Challenges become exercises in self-mastery. Indifference becomes a mirror reflecting the only person whose opinion truly matters, yourself. Every action, every choice, every moment spent with integrity strengthens your inner foundation. In 2026, when distraction and noise compete for your mind, this kind of training is invaluable. This mindset also transforms your relationship with others. You become less reactive, less needy, and less desperate for connection. You stop trying to control or manipulate how people feel about you. Instead, you engage honestly, calmly, and fairly. Stoicism teaches that respect is earned through consistency and character, not by forcing attention. As a result, your relationships improve quietly without drama or demand. You will notice that fear of failure diminishes. When nobody sees, failure loses much of its sting. The worst that can happen is simply being unnoticed, and that is no longer painful. You are free to experiment, to take risks, and to make mistakes without shame. Marcus Aurelius believed that obstacles and setbacks are opportunities to exercise virtue and wisdom. By embracing failure privately, you transform it into growth. Your patience strengthens. Life no longer feels like a race to impress others. You move at your own pace, focused on mastery and understanding rather than attention. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that nature works according to its own rhythm. By aligning with that rhythm instead of chasing external validation, you discover a calm persistence that others rarely attain. You also become more emotionally self-sufficient. Emotional storms that once would have thrown you off balance now pass with minimal effect. Praise does not inflate you, and criticism does not deflate you. You act with reason and reflection rather than with reactivity. This emotional equilibrium becomes a source of quiet influence. People notice it, though it is subtle, because calm confidence is magnetic. Over time, your perspective on time itself shifts. You stop measuring your progress by external markers of success and start measuring it by internal consistency and integrity. Each day becomes an opportunity to build resilience, skill, and character. Marcus Aurelius emphasized the importance of daily reflection and incremental improvement, not fleeting moments of recognition. In solitude, you find richness. The absence of external attention allows you to explore your mind, strengthen your discipline, and clarify your values. You become intimate with your own thoughts and intentions. Stoicism teaches that the mind is a fortress. The more you strengthen it privately, the less any external turbulence can shake you. Eventually, the need for others to care about you fades completely. What matters is whether you are living aligned with your principles, cultivating virtue, and maintaining inner order. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the only true measure of a life well lived is the alignment of actions with reason. When that alignment is achieved, the world's attention becomes irrelevant. You may find that as this inner steadiness grows, people begin to respect and trust you naturally. But you do not act to earn their recognition. You act because it is right. Recognition, if it comes, is a byproduct of integrity, not its motivation. This is the true power that Stoicism cultivates. Influence that is quiet, durable, and rooted in self-mastery rather than performance. And so as 2026 unfolds, you move forward with composure. You take responsibility for your thoughts, your actions, and your growth. You act with discipline even when unseen, endure patiently even when ignored, and live with purpose even without applause. Marcus Aurelius understood that the only approval worth having is your own. Once you internalize that truth, you are untouchable. Your life becomes a steady force in a turbulent world. Nobody caring no longer feels like a deprivation. It becomes an opportunity to act freely, think clearly, and grow stronger every day. You have become self-reliant, resilient, and aligned. You have become stoic. This is the essence of Marcus Aurelius' wisdom carried into modern life. The world may ignore you, misjudge you, or misunderstand you, and yet you remain unwavering. You are free because you care most about the only thing that truly matters, the integrity and mastery of your own life. As this perspective solidifies, a profound calm begins to pervade every aspect of your life. You start to notice how much mental energy was previously wasted worrying about recognition, judgment, or approval. That energy, once scattered in the pursuit of attention, is now available for growth, reflection, and deliberate action. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that the mind is strengthened not by accolades, but by repeated practice of virtue. When nobody cares, every small act of discipline compounds silently into strength. You begin to see clearly the distinction between what belongs to you and what does not. Other people's opinions, reactions, and indifference belong to them, not to you. Stoicism teaches that trying to control or internalize what is outside your control is a source of suffering. When nobody cares about your efforts, your successes, or your struggles, you are reminded that your focus should be on what is truly yours, your actions, your thoughts, and your character. This realization transforms your approach to challenges. You stop asking, will they notice? Or will they approve? You ask instead, what is the right way to act in this situation? Every decision becomes a measure of integrity rather than a performance for the crowd. Marcus Aurelius believed that acting justly and wisely is its own reward. When nobody observes, you are free to act with purity of intention, untainted by the desire for external validation. You also become deeply resilient. When failures or setbacks occur, they no longer shake your sense of self. Without the weight of expectations from others, disappointment loses its potency. You learn to see obstacles as tools, challenges as teachers, and adversity as a necessary forge for strength. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the obstacle itself is the path. When nobody cares whether you succeed or fail, the path becomes clearer because you move unimpeded by imagined judgment. Gradually, you become more intentional with your time. The distraction of social comparison fades. You no longer spend hours measuring yourself against others' curated images or opinions. You devote attention to practice, study, reflection, and improvement. This quiet focus builds competence, skill, and wisdom over time, foundations that last far longer than fleeting recognition ever could. You also cultivate a kind of inner contentment that is independent of circumstance. Praise no longer inflates your ego, and criticism no longer wounds it. You find satisfaction in alignment, aligning your actions with your principles, your values, and your long-term vision. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that the only true wealth is the mastery of oneself. When nobody cares, that mastery is unshakable. In relationships, this mindset brings freedom. You give attention without demanding it in return. You act with kindness without needing gratitude. You maintain your boundaries without apology. Stoicism teaches that emotional independence enhances connection because it removes the transactional nature from interactions. People are drawn to authenticity and calm self-possession, even if they do not articulate it. You also notice that the pace of life slows in a meaningful way. When you are not chasing attention, you are no longer rushed. You take time to reflect before speaking. You pause before acting. You consider consequences. Marcus Aurelius valued deliberation over haste, understanding that a moment of thought can prevent a lifetime of regret. This slow, deliberate rhythm allows life to feel fuller and more manageable. Eventually, the idea that a nobody cares becomes liberating rather than disheartening. It strips away all pretense and forces you to confront the essence of your existence, your choices, your discipline, your purpose. Stoicism teaches that the only life truly worth living is one where your actions are coherent with your values, not with the applause or attention of others. Your ability to endure grows. You develop patience not only with life but with yourself. Mistakes are no longer sources of shame but of learning. Each misstep becomes a lesson in self-command and perspective. Marcus Aurelius often reflected on his own failings in private, using them to cultivate greater wisdom and patience. This private reflection, free from public scrutiny, strengthens character far more effectively than public acknowledgement ever could. You start to understand that freedom is not the absence of responsibility, but the mastery of it. When nobody cares whether you act rightly or poorly, the responsibility rests fully with you. This can feel weighty at first, but it is also empowering. You realize that you are in control of your choices, your reactions, and your growth. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that living in accordance with reason is the ultimate form of freedom. And so, as 2026 progresses, you carry yourself with calm confidence. You act with integrity in unseen moments. You endure challenges silently, knowing they shape you more than applause ever could. You build strength, wisdom, and character quietly with patience and consistency. In the end, you understand that the truest form of success is not recognition, attention, or fame, but mastery of the self, the ability to remain steady, disciplined, and purposeful, no matter who is watching. As you continue living this way, you begin to notice a shift in how you perceive struggle itself. Challenges that once felt like personal attacks or unfair burdens now feel like opportunities to refine your character. When nobody cares, the world stops feeling like it owes you understanding, comfort, or recognition. You start to accept things exactly as they are, without complaint or resentment. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself constantly that life presents what it must, and it is up to you to respond with virtue. This acceptance does not make you passive. It makes you proactive in the only areas you truly control: your thoughts, your actions, and your attitude. You start to cultivate a quiet confidence that does not depend on external validation. You no longer ask silently, do they see me? Do they respect me? Because the answer no longer matters, your sense of self-worth becomes internalized and self-sufficient. Stoicism teaches that the only approval that truly counts is your own, because no one else is responsible for your virtue or your growth. This internal approval brings a stability that fame, praise, or recognition could never offer. You begin to appreciate the value of solitude. In the absence of constant attention, you have the space to think deeply, reflect honestly, and plan effectively. You can examine your thoughts without fear of judgment. Marcus Aurelius often wrote in his journal precisely to clarify his mind and keep his principles strong, knowing that the world would not understand or witness his private effort. In solitude, you train your mind to be resilient, your decisions to be deliberate, and your soul to be self-reliant. Your perspective on relationships also deepens. You interact with others without dependence on their approval. You give freely, act fairly, and listen with patience because you are not seeking reciprocation or recognition. Stoicism teaches that detachment from outcomes does not mean detachment from people. It means clarity in what is in your control. By freeing yourself from the need to be noticed, you become a steadier, calmer, and more trustworthy presence for those around you. You develop patience with the pace of your own growth. You stop comparing yourself to others, understanding that life is not a race but a process. When nobody cares whether you will keep up, you are free to focus on mastery rather than appearances. Every skill you cultivate, every discipline you maintain, every thoughtful choice you make becomes a foundation that grows stronger over time. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that the development of the soul is gradual and continuous. This is where true progress lies. Even in moments of disappointment, when results are not as expected, you respond differently. You do not collapse under frustration or envy. You view the outcome with clarity. It is what it is. Your responsibility is in how you respond, not in how others perceive your efforts. The Stoic mind sees obstacles as inevitable and remains calm because it expects nothing from the world except the opportunity to act rightly. You start to see the long-term advantage of invisibility. While others burn themselves out performing for attention, you conserve your energy for creation, reflection, and endurance. Every unseen act of discipline strengthens you more than any public recognition ever could. Marcus Aurelius believed that the unseen work is what truly defines a person. The quiet consistency of effort builds a life far more resilient than one built for applause. Over time, you stop personalizing indifference or neglect. Silence no longer feels like rejection, and absence no longer feels like abandonment. You understand that most people are preoccupied with their own lives and struggles. When nobody cares about your progress or your struggles, it is not a slight, it is freedom. Freedom to grow, to act, to focus, and to become the person you are meant to be. You also notice that fear diminishes. Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of not being enough, all of these lose their grip. When nobody cares, failure becomes private, and private failure carries lessons rather than shame. You are free to experiment, to try, to stumble, and to rise again without the chains of expectation. Marcus Aurelius wrote that adversity is a training ground for virtue, and you begin to live that truth. Finally, this philosophy transforms the very way you view life itself. You no longer live for moments of recognition or fleeting applause. You live for depth, for purpose, for integrity. You measure your success by your character, by your endurance, and by your capacity to act rightly in each moment. When nobody cares, you are free to live authentically, wisely, and fully. Marcus Aurelius believed that the ultimate measure of a good life is not attention received, but virtue practiced. And so you continue, day after day, quietly building a life that is steady, resilient, and meaningful. You endure when ignored. You act when unseen. You grow when unnoticed. In the end, the world's attention becomes irrelevant because your life is anchored in what truly matters: your own reason, your own discipline, and your own virtue. This is the essence of Marcus Aurelius' Stoic wisdom carried into 2026. The ultimate power is not in being seen or cared for, but in being unshakable, self-reliant, and aligned with your highest principles, no matter who notices. As you continue living this way, another realization takes hold. The world's indifference is not a punishment, but a gift. When nobody cares, you are freed from performance. You are free from the endless cycle of seeking approval, explaining yourself, and trying to meet impossible expectations. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that true freedom comes from within, from acting rightly regardless of applause. The world's gaze is fleeting. Your integrity is lasting. You start to see that most of life's suffering comes not from events themselves, but from how you interpret them. Anger, frustration, disappointment, these arise when you believe others' opinions define your worth. When nobody cares, those interpretations lose power. You can act calmly, think clearly, and respond deliberately. This detachment is not indifference to life, it is mastery over your own reactions. Your attention becomes more valuable. You stop scattering it on trivial concerns, gossip, or the endless noise of comparison. Every thought, every action, every moment becomes purposeful. Marcus Aurelius emphasized that time is precious and should not be squandered on things beyond your control. When nobody cares, you stop spending your life performing for observers and start investing it in what truly matters. You also grow more accepting of solitude. Time alone is no longer a punishment or a source of loneliness. It becomes a sanctuary for reflection, self-discipline, and growth. In solitude, you can think clearly, act intentionally, and align your life with your principles. Marcus Aurelius frequently withdrew into his own thoughts to examine his behavior, correct his errors, and strengthen his character. Following his example, you too cultivate inner fortitude in private, unseen moments. Your relationship with failure changes. Failure no longer feels catastrophic or shameful. Without an audience, mistakes are merely feedback, information to correct course and improve. Marcus Aurelius wrote that life's difficulties are opportunities to practice virtue. When nobody is watching, failure becomes a teacher rather than a source of humiliation. You learn faster, endure more, and adapt more effectively. Over time, you develop patience with the pace of your own life. You no longer measure yourself against the successes or failures of others. Life is not a race to impress. It is a process of growth. When nobody is watching your progress, you are free to focus on mastery, not appearances. Every small, consistent effort compounds, building a foundation far stronger than anything performed for recognition. You also stop being swayed by public opinion. Praise does not inflate you, and criticism does not deflate you. You measure yourself by internal standards of reason and virtue. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself that external judgment is unreliable and fleeting. Only your own judgment matters. In this way, your self-respect becomes unshakable. Even in relationships, this philosophy brings clarity and balance. You engage with others without needing their validation. You act with fairness, honesty, and patience because it is right, not to impress or gain approval. This freedom strengthens your bonds while maintaining integrity. Stoicism teaches that emotional independence is the foundation of healthy connection. You start to recognize that being unnoticed is a rare advantage. Without an audience, you are free to make mistakes, experiment, and grow without fear. Every private act of discipline, every quiet effort, every moment of reflection strengthens your mind, body, and character. Marcus Aurelius often emphasized that virtue is cultivated through consistent practice, not recognition. Eventually, your life becomes quieter, yet stronger. You act with integrity even when unseen, endure challenges even when ignored, and grow steadily even without encouragement. Recognition, if it comes, is a byproduct, not a motivation. Your satisfaction comes from alignment with your principles, not from external applause. You become aware that freedom from attention allows you to focus on what truly matters: your actions, your growth, your discipline, and your inner peace. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the purpose of life is to live in accordance with reason and virtue. The world may be indifferent, but you are in full command of yourself. Your perspective on life shifts fundamentally. You no longer live to be admired. You live to act rightly. You no longer fear judgment. You embrace challenge. You no longer chase recognition. You cultivate wisdom, resilience, and inner peace. And so your days are spent building a life that cannot be shaken by the world's indifference. You act with purpose, endure with patience, and grow quietly but steadily. When nobody cares, you are free. When nobody notices, you are powerful. When you rely only on your own reason, discipline, and virtue, you become unassailable. This is the Stoic path Marcus Aurelius laid out centuries ago, brought fully into the modern world of 2026. A life of self-mastery, resilience, and calm strength, impervious to applause, criticism, or neglect. As this wisdom settles fully into your life, another truth becomes clear. The world's indifference is not a void to be feared, but a canvas on which you can build your character. When nobody is watching, you are free to act with absolute honesty, without embellishment or pretense. Marcus Aurelius wrote extensively about living in accordance with reason, not opinion, and this is exactly what unfolds when you stop seeking validation. You begin to realize that a life crafted in private, guided by virtue, is far more stable and meaningful than one performed for applause. You notice that most anxiety and frustration in life stem from attachment to what others think. When nobody cares, that attachment disappears. Decisions that once felt complicated by imagined judgment now feel clear and simple. You ask yourself, is this the right thing to do? Rather than will they approve? This clarity sharpens your judgment, strengthens your resolve, and lightens your mental load. Your resilience grows steadily. Setbacks, mistakes, and obstacles no longer shake you because you no longer rely on external recognition for validation. Failure becomes a private tutor. Adversity becomes a forge, and struggle becomes the path to mastery. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself that life's difficulties are necessary for growth, and that enduring them with dignity strengthens the soul. You also begin to see the hidden gift in solitude. Being unseen allows you to observe your thoughts, correct your errors, and cultivate habits without distraction. Your internal dialogue becomes disciplined and kind, holding you accountable without judgment or drama. In these private moments, you build strength far beyond what public recognition could ever achieve. Your patience matures. You no longer rush to prove yourself or achieve immediate results. You understand that true mastery, true understanding, and true character are developed slowly, consistently, and quietly. Marcus Aurelius compared life to a journey, emphasizing that every step, no matter how small, contributes to the whole. When nobody is watching, you can walk this journey deliberately, without fear or distraction. Your emotional balance strengthens. Praise does not inflate you, and criticism does not wound you. You learn to meet both with equanimity. Stoicism teaches that emotions are responses we can govern. Over time, you develop a calm confidence that is rare and magnetic, not loud or performative, but steady, enduring, and undeniable. In relationships, you gain freedom and clarity. You act with kindness, fairness, and integrity, not to earn recognition, but because it is the right thing to do. Emotional independence does not isolate you. It enhances your connections. You become a steady presence, able to support others without being dependent on their approval or validation. You also develop a deeper appreciation for effort itself. Actions matter more than acknowledgement. Discipline, patience, and consistency in your unseen work accumulate quietly but powerfully. Marcus Aurelius constantly emphasized that virtue is cultivated privately through repeated practice, not public praise. The unseen work builds a foundation that cannot be shaken by the world's indifference. Gradually, fear loses its grip. Fear of judgment, failure, and insignificance fades. When nobody cares, failure becomes private, allowing you to learn from it without shame. You can experiment, grow, and recover more quickly because your self-worth is internal, rooted in your choices and principles. Your perspective on life shifts profoundly. Life is no longer a performance for an audience. It is a practice in virtue, discipline, and reason. You focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your attitude. The rest, the opinions, attention, and indifference of others, becomes irrelevant. Marcus Aurelius taught that the purpose of life is to live rightly, not to be admired. When this truth is internalized, you are unshakable. You begin to see that being unnoticed is a gift, not a deprivation. It allows you to act freely, grow steadily, and refine your character without distraction. You become unbothered by applause, criticism, or neglect. Your life is governed by principle, not perception. Every day of disciplined effort, quiet reflection, and deliberate action strengthens your foundation. And so your days unfold with quiet purpose. You act rightly, endure patiently, and grow consistently, regardless of who is watching or who cares. In this way, the world's indifference becomes a tool rather than a burden. It trains you to be self-reliant, disciplined, and unwavering. Marcus Aurelius' wisdom becomes alive, a life of reason, virtue, and calm resilience in a chaotic world. Your journey is no longer about being seen or approved. It is about becoming steady, grounded, and strong. Nobody caring no longer feels like loss, it becomes liberation. In this freedom you find power, peace, and clarity. As you continue down this path, a deeper realization emerges. The world's indifference is not emptiness, it is clarity. When nobody cares, you are no longer distracted by comparison, envy, or the endless need to perform. Your energy is free. Marcus Aurelius repeatedly reminded himself that it is better to focus on what you can control, your thoughts, your actions, your principles, than to chase the fleeting approval of others. This clarity is liberating because it allows you to see life as it truly is, not as you wish it to be perceived. You notice that the small irritations and distractions that once consumed you, the slight offense, the unnoticed effort, the unreturned favor, lose their power. Without the pressure of judgment or expectation, These things simply pass. Stoicism teaches that the world's opinions are neutral, only your response gives them weight. In 2026, when distractions are endless and reactions immediate, this ability to remain calm and composed becomes a rare and valuable skill. Your focus shifts to mastery over yourself rather than over others' perceptions. Every choice, every habit, every moment of discipline becomes an investment in your character. Recognition becomes irrelevant because your work is no longer performative. It is purposeful. Marcus Aurelius believed that the cultivation of virtue is the ultimate human task, and when nobody is watching, you are free to cultivate it fully. Even setbacks no longer intimidate you. Without an audience, failure is private, manageable, and instructive. You learn from it, adjust, and move forward without shame or drama. Life's difficulties are no longer burdens to complain about. They are tools for growth. Marcus Aurelius wrote that obstacles are not to be avoided, but used as opportunities to practice courage, wisdom, and resilience. Your emotional life transforms as well. You stop being swayed by praise, applause, or criticism. Emotions are no longer reactive to external conditions but reflective of your internal reasoning. Calm confidence replaces anxiety. Patience replaces urgency. Strength replaces insecurity. This emotional stability is magnetic, even if subtle. It draws respect not because it demands it, but because it is undeniable. In your interactions, you no longer manipulate or seek validation. You speak and act with clarity, honesty, and fairness because that is what virtue demands. You no longer expend energy trying to control how others perceive you, and as a result, your relationships improve. Emotional independence does not isolate. It allows genuine connection. People sense your steadiness and reliability, even if they do not articulate it. You come to value the unseen work more than the visible.